Having all the information is not enough. Throughout my career, I've coached hundreds of people to their first deal and helped them get started in real estate development.
You've covered the process, the money, the risk, and the identity shift. What's the one thing that's left? The thing that actually makes all of that work?
Over 96% of people we've had demo calls with, they have the desire to learn the knowledge. What they don't have is that person in their corner to help them really understand why a deal doesn't pencil, or also what deals are worth pursuing at all, right? So the gap isn't really information. Information today is free for the most part. It's really the isolation. There's an isolation gap. People need to have a community where they can ask questions, have to have a person that they can deeply trust to understand, like, okay, hey, I'm on the right track, I'm doing the right deal. And yeah, that's what it takes to really see results. Information today, for the most part, is free. But what really changes the outcome is having the right guidance.
But there's so much free content out there. Can't someone just learn this on their own?
Free content is great for awareness, right? We're having this channel here. This is for people to get awareness. We have one member that said there's 100 times more information on real estate investing than there is on development. Development is really niche, and that's why it's more for awareness to consume free content. But then when you're really trying to get into the nuts and bolts, and also if you're trying to actually shortcut your learning curve, that's when you really want to be part of a community, work with a mentor coach that can take you from where you are today to your ultimate end goal, right? It's like the GPS. You've got to know where you want to go, which is like that awareness piece. And then you plug in the information, and that's essentially then with the right person, right mentor, that you actually get there, right? Like today, without Google Maps, we wouldn't get anywhere. That's our daily coach to get to where we're trying to go. I think real estate development is so niche that people don't realize how valuable and how important it is really working with someone one-on-one, or even being part of a community, right? Like even if you have a once a month call, that can make all the difference. Stefano, he started with our Launchpad, and we have a bonus like monthly call. And within 6 months, he actually finished a house. He split a corner lot and got invested in a 15-unit townhome development. So those are huge results because he was in that community with us, right? And so we've had other experiences with folks that have spent $2,000 a month on like a cold call service, or some kind of like a service where people promise to take away that stress of getting the first deal or so. But the reality is, like, you still got to do the work. Like, yes, you should invest in certain direct marketing campaigns if you can afford that, but it's still about like, okay, well, how does the deal pencil, right? Like, and YouTube is great, but it doesn't call you back when you're trying to analyze a deal, get GC bits, or try to figure out whether your pro forma makes sense. So it's just truly that access that is making the difference, right, between a free content source and then a mentorship coaching program or whatever it is. And at the end of the day, I do what I preach as well. I have been in so many different coaching programs. It just helps me speed up my results that I'm after. I know I can figure out a lot of things for free, which it's never free. It's actually like usually the most expensive, DIYing it, right? But I do it in order to just get the results faster. Free content, great to get awareness, to get an overview. ChatGPT, all that stuff is great for that. But you don't get the best lessons and lessons learned unless you're really working one-on-one with someone and you get their attention. So you just essentially invest in access. Free content gives you awareness, and a mentor gives you execution.
What about people who feel like they just need to research more before they're ready?
I need to learn a little bit more. That's what I hear every single week. And here's the pattern. At least 8 out of 10 people have been researching at least 1 to 3 years, and they're more confused than when they started. Every Google search opens up 5 more questions. They're never really starting to take action. The free content model works like this. You get a blueprint that generally gives you an overview, and you feel like you have some of the pieces, but a lot of people leave you hanging, not really actually implementing on what they just gave you. And I think that's where we're different. We've had that as feedback from our members that ended up like working with us, saying you really care, you actually are really there all the way along the process of implementing what you're preaching. I think today there's a lot of fragmented advice out there without really people taking accountability for what they're putting out. And so that's where I really want to be different. Again, like, we really care about our members' outcome, But we need to make sure that, in order to work with people, that there is investment on both ends. We want people that have seen some success, have, flipped some properties, made some money, but we want to help them now level up and really build a scalable business versus the onesie twosies here of fix and flips. Another thing that really stood out to me on a lot of the calls that we've had with prospects is them just saying, hey, I just need the structure, right? And a lot of times when you shop here on Google and Instagram, you keep scrolling and you're listening to all these gurus and whatnot, then you don't necessarily feel like you have any structure. So truly, I think we're really good at providing that structure and approaching everything very systematically. And so I think it gives people a sense of security when they're learning, that they know, okay, hey, I just have to follow this path, and then, that leads to that first deal. Research without a mentor is a hamster wheel. You feel productive, but yet you're running in the same place.
Okay, but there are a lot of mentors out there. What makes a mentor actually effective?
A mentor is effective when they're actually still doing what, they said they would do, or that they're teaching. I think there's so many people out there, gurus, that were relevant 10 years ago and just made a course, right, selling that sort of evergreen, and are not anymore actually developing. And so I think there's a huge difference. The market has changed 3 times by then. We've seen a down market, right? We're just starting to come back up. And I think a lot of times you see mentors that are just flashy on Instagram and are not really sharing some of the truth, that the stuff is hard. Like, this is not always just like roses and sunshine. I think a mentor is really effective, that especially in a safe space, in a group like ours, for example, I can openly share some of the rougher aspects too that I've been going through, because that way I can share in real time also of lessons that, I don't want anybody to repeat, right? And so I think that makes someone a whole lot more effective than just being flashy and shiny on Instagram. In fact, actually, a lot of times, like personally, when, I look for coaches and whatnot, that would turn me off, that would actually make me walk away. We've had so many calls with prospects that became Developer Academy members that said that they had so many calls with other folks that are just not really active anymore, and they want someone who development is their bread and butter. We know from our own Developer Academy members that obviously have had also calls with other folks that are, coaching real estate development, and they've said, a lot of them are not actively developing anymore, and that they preferred someone that really makes a living developing. And so I think there's a huge difference in, like, especially today's world, on Instagram, YouTube, whatnot, that you want to find the people that are really actively doing what it is you're trying to learn, but also are not shy to share the hard lessons, right? Again, I think we all learn a lot of times from our worst times than from our best times. And so I think with that, it's awesome seeing people also giving it back to others. And so we want to raise more coaches, right? We want people to go through their deals and then also, again, share it back with other people. In short, though, I think having access to someone that's doing development right now is worth more than every course combined.
Why does being around other developers matter so much?
There are 3 things that happen when you put yourself in the right rooms. First, proximity changes identity. We had a member with a W-2 background come into the group saying, I'm not really sure if this is for me. And then he saw other people with the same starting point closing deals, and all of a sudden he went, oh wow, when I saw so-and-so doing X, Y, and Z, I learned that I can do this too. So that shift in identity doesn't happen when you're watching YouTube videos by yourself at night. It happens when you are in the right room where, your someday is someone else's last Thursday. Second, deal flow accelerates. Members are sharing contractors, lenders, deals, you name it, and you can save yourself months of cold outreach by just being in that community, and someone else might already have the contact you're looking for. Our approach is that everything stays in-house. And finally, accountability. When 10 other developers on a weekly call are hearing your progress and you said, hey, I'm going to make 5 offers this week, well, you can't hide. The next week, people know whether you've done it or not, and that pressure is a gift. The community isn't a nice to have, it is the advantage.
So it's not just about one mentor, it's about having a whole team?
Developers don't win by knowing everything, they win by building the right teams. Your first deal, you need a GC, construction lender, potentially, an engineer. Obviously, you need an architect. But the hardest thing is not finding these people. It's knowing who's actually really good and should be on your team. In the academy, we share of who's doing really good work. And so it saves you a lot of money by having to re-vet someone new that might suck at the end of the day, right? So it might actually save you $30,000 just right then and there. And that's something that you get out of a community, but not a Google search. And keep in mind that you're also learning from other people in the group. We have civil engineers, attorney, architects, builders, whatnot. And so you're feeding off everybody's knowledge, and that in itself actually saves you so much in hard lessons, right? Because they can quickly say, oh, hey, something seems odd, or hey, this is spot on. And so we've had the feedback, from our folks saying like, oh my God, this is so valuable. I don't just get you, I get the whole team.
What about you? Did you have a mentor when you started?
I built the thing that I wish existed when I started, and that's what the Developer Academy is for me. When I started as an immigrant here, building ground up, I didn't have the network. I didn't have, capital of my own, or someone really to call and ask for help. At the time, it was all like pretty much DIYing, trial by errors and trial by fire, and it was very, very expensive. On the very first deal, we ended up hiring a GC that initially said that he was really the primary person, and then come to find out that actually he's operating under someone else's license. There was an issue of control, right? But then also as the project went on, we just realized, okay, I think the other guy actually has maybe a substance issue. So it wasn't really reliable. Like if the guy said, oh, hey, yeah, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, you just couldn't bank that was going to get done. So in retrospect, on the first deal just by itself, we should have really vetted the GC very, very differently. But I didn't know better, right? So I just kind of went with it because one of the guys seemed fine. And so, just that right there cost us at least 30 to 50K. Because at the end, we had some issues with the units, and we had to pay on top to fix things that, I think a better contractor just wouldn't have made those errors. So, when I first started, there was one person that I leaned most on, and that was actually my land use attorney. And that was of huge help. But obviously, that is a very niche expertise that only helps on really the legal aspect and the zoning factors, not necessarily on the actual construction execution of things. And so just even by that one experience there, that ultimately ended up making the project work, because we also messed up on some things in regards to the zoning. We basically took land that was sort of a community park, and we knew we could subdivide and put 2 units on each. But the factor was that we had to start with the outer part, it was a corner lot, that lot first, so that basically gets grandfathered in, and then we could start with the next set. Well, we essentially didn't realize that there were going to be setback differences between the 2 lots. And so we ended up actually building the second set too close to, or started essentially too close to the sidewalk. And so we ended up being able to remedy it with our land use attorney. But there were just so many nuances in that first deal, right, that without the right guidance, you're really screwed. You will pay on top. And so I always say, you're going to pay one way or another. It's either voluntarily by, bringing the right people on your team, or involuntarily by, you thinking you can just DIY it. By you thinking you can DIY it and then you pay for it later.
So we've covered the process, money, risk, identity, the benefits of having a mentor. So why should the end game of any real estate professional be development?
Because development is something that you then can pass on to your kids. You're doing it for legacy. Most of us are not necessarily doing this for a paycheck or a deal. It's really more so to truly build a empire that you can then also pass on to the next generation, right? You're ultimately wanting to build at some point to rent, so that you have also additional residual income coming back, right? And you're building a truly strong asset base. We've had members that have brought their sons around to the projects, and for example, even one here in Dallas, actually, he has a 17-year-old son, and he's currently still working a W-2 job that he's getting close to quitting, because he's finished his first deal and is already working on the next. that when he brings his son there, it's truly to teach that generational wealth, changing basically the trajectory for the family, right? And also showing your kids that, hey, this is available for you. Like, you can learn this, you can do this as well, right? And really passing on the teaching. And I think you've really got to always ask yourself, you can't take money with you, so what will your kids inherit? A paycheck or a portfolio?
If someone's hearing all of this and they're ready to take the first step, what should they do right now?
You know the process works. You know you don't need $500,000 in the bank to get started. You know development isn't risky when you do it right. You know it starts with identity. You're a developer and you're not just thinking about it. And now you know the last piece. You can't do it alone. So the question isn't, can I do this? The question is, what am I waiting for? I've never seen progress without someone actually deciding to start. And I think it's huge for you who has already some kind of a real estate, background to actually just expand your horizon, right? If you've been a flipper, then now you have a flipping network. Probably a lot of your other friends are doing flips. So you need to get out of your network. You gotta expand and really put yourself in those rooms, in that seat of a developer and networking like a developer, so that you are basically already living like what you're trying to do. So really deciding to start and then expanding your network right away. If you're ready to stop talking about development and ready to get started, check out the link down below. That is our roadmap that's gonna give you the step-by-step guidance. If you are interested in working with me, just DM me start on Instagram.